All right, folks, welcome back. We're looking here at slide 25, which is where we left off with our first video. And again, the name of these videos are specific to our chapter called Do You Have Cell Service? And then we have these particular problems, which are problem 1, why are proteins so important in the cell? Our second most important question we want to learn more about is what's happening inside our cells and organs when we fail to survive. So what are the cells doing or not doing when we fail to survive? And then how do abiotic variables impact the organisms? So we want to keep exploring these important questions and hopefully learn more about each one of them, each one of these major problems as we get through our new chapter. Do you have cell service? We have slide 25 right here. And we just start out this chapter briefly comparing two types of cells, two categories. You have your prokaryotic cells and you have your eukaryotic cells. Looking at both of them, you should clearly see differences. Now, this doesn't look like every single eukaryotic cell, and this doesn't look like every single prokaryotic cell. But it's two models made by two different artists or scientists to represent their understanding of what a prokaryotic cell has that's important. Notice it's got labels to certain sections, and the important parts and labels of a eukaryotic cell. Your job on slide 25 is to do this. It says compare and contrast the internal structures and membranes of prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. It says write in complete, clear sentences. So the first thing it says compare them. So your job is to look at this one and look at this one. And how are they similar? Is there anything you see here and the labels that is similar to this? Now, in writing your complete, clear sentence about how they're similar, you're recommended to turn to page 38 in your notebook, or use this slide if your notebook's here in the classroom. But it says if you're adding information showing similarity, so choose one of these words here, additionally, as well as, also, likewise, furthermore, to begin with. Try to use any one of these words that helps you show similarity or comparison between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. And then do the same for contrast. You have your contrast. What's differences? There's probably more differences than similarity between these cells. But what's different between them? So contrast. And here, if you are showing that one idea is different from another, in other words, if you're showing that one cell is different from the other type of cell, use one of these words, however, yet, but, despite, although, in contrast. Any one of these words are excellent words to use when you're trying to explain that the prokaryotic are different than the eukaryotic. Last thing is, just remember as you write similarities or differences, and as you're trying to use your transition words from page 38 in your notebook, make sure that you're focusing on the internal structures and the membranes of each. All right. Slide 26 we just talked about. It helps with slide 25. Slide 27 is specific to prokaryotic cells. So we have a definition here we want to get. It says prokaryotic cells lack internal structures with membranes. A good example of this is that they lack a nucleus. A nucleus, if we look at this eukaryotic cell, we have a nucleus here, but the nucleus is surrounded in a membrane. It's the nuclear membrane. It envelops the nucleus. However, here you have all this spaghetti-looking DNA, but there's no membrane wrapping around it. Prokaryotic cells lack these membranes. They lack any membranes that create barriers or surround certain parts of the cell. It says most prokaryotic cells are single-celled, and it says they can be pathogens or causing infections. Let's look. In your journal, it says take a guess, otherwise known as a hypothesis. So number 1 for slide 27, it says, where on campus do you think you'd encounter the biggest bacteria populations? So where do you think is the most bacteria-ridden, the one that's most likely to contain lots of bacteria? Where do you think? Anywhere on campus, where would you expect? And then number 2, it says, what personal item or product that you own do you think is most likely to have bacteria on it? Where do you think you'd be most likely to find the bacteria on something you own? Anything. personal item, a product, whatever. And that would be the 2 questions you answer for slide 27. This picture right here shows Staphylococcus epidermis. This is a bacteria that lives on the skin, providing a first line of defense from harmful bacteria. That's right, your skin. Now, the surface of your body is your skin cells, but there are bacteria or prokaryotic cells that live on the surface of your skin. They live and they benefit. I'm not sure exactly what they get from the body, but it's a symbiotic relationship. It's beneficial. And they help us because when they're on our skin, they actually help kill and remove other bacteria that try to land on the skin. So we have Staphylococcus epidermis, which are these green little circles here. This is a microscopic real image of Staphylococcus, but they live on your skin. And we have lots of them. Look at this. It says amount of bacteria living in or on your body that help you survive is about 3 pounds. I dare you to pick up a 3-pound weight and feel how heavy it is. That's how many bacteria live in your body or on your skin that actually help you survive. That's a lot of bacteria. Germaphobes beware. Each one of these video links build on those ideas and will help you get a better appreciation for bacteria and prokaryotic cells. All right, we got slide 28. Let's keep moving. Slide 28 is a simple thing. It's just background information. It compares prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So if you found yourself a little confused by slide 25, you can use this table to help you on slide 28. It's different organisms. Eukaryotes or eukaryotic cells include protists, fungus, plants, and animals. So we are eukaryotic. And then you have prokaryotics or prokaryotes that include bacteria mostly. Most prokaryotes are single-celled, and eukaryotes includes both single-celled and multicellular. Like us, we're a multicellular organism. You can see other things as well. It says typically prokaryotes are smaller than eukaryotes, so it'd be easier to look at a eukaryote cell under a microscope just because they're larger on average. All right, let's go to slide 29. Slide 29 is recognizing that some pathogens aren't just bacterial. It's very common to have pathogens in our environment that are eukaryotes. And a specific eukaryote is fungi. It says about 30% of known fungal species are pathogens. It says some fungi attack food crops and are toxic to humans. That's what happens when you see the mold on old food. We tend not to eat the old food when it has that fuzz on it because that fungus can be toxic to us. It says animals, like humans, aren't as susceptible to fungus as plants, so plants have a harder time defending themselves from fungus than animals. And if you have a fungal infection, like, let's see, athlete's foot, or perhaps the dreaded yeast infection, if you're a particular gender, either of those infections are caused by fungus, athlete's foot and yeast infection. And if you are infected with either of those, you can say it, you are experiencing mycosis. Sounds gross. Sorry, had to say it. All right, slide 30. Slide 30 is just reminding us that when we live really closely, and this was straight out of chapter 4, it says limiting variables where a population lives very close is called density dependent. So how quickly fungus or bacteria pathogens spread has to do with how close we live together. And that's why our school is such a perfect opportunity to experiment and study where these pathogens are. Because these single-celled organisms, whether they're fungus or bacteria, whether they're prokaryotic or eukaryotic, they're definitely on surfaces. And because there's so many people at our school, there's definitely a lot going on the surfaces, from hand contact, handshaking, fist bumps, to the restroom, to the library, to doors. These pathogens are everywhere. And they're spread because we live so close together. So disease, density dependent, means it depends on how close we live together. Slide 31. Keep it going. Slide 31 is a reference that we're going to do in Incubation Lab. We are going to scour and choose as teams the areas that we think will contain the greatest number of pathogens. Or it could be a personal item, something that you own that you think will just be coated in gross pathogens. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see what grows on it. We're going to swab it using a little Q-tip. We'll swab a surface that you think is containing pathogens that are prokaryotic bacteria or eukaryotic fungus, and then we'll try to grow them and see what happens. This will be a fun lab, and potentially a gross lab. Slide 32 is what we'll use when we're doing our lab. Just go ahead and ignore it. Slide 33 is our first official definition of a eukaryotic cell. And again, you can see that eukaryotic cells include insects, fungus, protists, which are single-celled awesome creatures, and then animals and plants. And this is yeast right here. So, and yeast is a type of fungus. So this is a single-celled version of eukaryotic fungus, and this is a multicellular version of a fungus. It says eukaryotic cells contain those internal structures wrapped up or contained by a membrane. So these internal parts of a cell like this that you can see in the picture, they're all coated in membranes. And those membranes are made up of what we'll soon find out is lipids. And a membrane is a thin structure separating two regions. So cells separate different parts of their bodies using these membranes. And here's a perfect example. You have a thin material. This is a membrane. And you can see things on this side separate from this side. It says provide two reasons to support how eukaryotes would maybe be considered more advanced. So just think about this. Compare, if you go back and look at on slide 25, you have the prokaryotic cell and you have the eukaryotic cell. Just looking at them, why would somebody suggest that a eukaryotic cell is more advanced? We do know that a eukaryotic cell contains membranes that separate different parts of the organism. So perhaps you could think about that as you write your reasoning of why eukaryotes are more advanced. Not better at surviving necessarily, but certainly their structures are a little more complex. So maybe you can write about that as you give reasons why somebody would think eukaryotes are more advanced. Both of these videos provide a lot of helpful background knowledge and would brighten your day and perhaps be more interesting than my own personal voice. So I recommend you watching these two videos of how stuff works. Prokaryotes, both listed here. Some more awesome graphics that scientists have taken. They use special microscopes and they dye cells with certain pigments so that they can make particular regions of cells glow. And when they glow under this special microscope and special lighting, they can see individual parts of the cell, the individual cell structures. And in a eukaryotic cell, we have our nucleus, which is coated in a membrane. And then you have these fibers that represent probably structural proteins. And then you have the outer coating of the cell, the overall cell membrane, which appears more clear in this picture. But each different region is unique and will get stained by a different pigment. And then that microscope makes them glow those different colors. Again, so you can see the membranes that coat certain areas in the cell. We got slide 35. It's really cool. It says cells that make the skin under fish scales and more pigments that are helping certain regions glow. These are cancer cells in a breast. Each glowing green section, I believe, are nucleus. This video is probably a fantastic video giving you a better appreciation of how the scientists are dyeing particular regions or membranes of the cell. Here you can see a white blood cell attacking germs. So these are prokaryotic bacteria in pink that have been stained pink, so they stand out. And then you have a white blood cell. You can see clearly it almost looks like an octopus. So we have special cells in the body that are helping protect us from these pathogens like bacteria. Then you can see these are many, many mammal cells stained different ways so that different parts of their cells are glowing so you can study them, but in the form of a reef, just like for Christmas. All right, it says the organelles or internal parts of each cell have a specific job. All organelles work together to help the cell survive. So it uses this new word we haven't studied called organelles. In our next video sequence, we'll study that word and try to learn a little more about it. All right, that concludes video number 2 that went all the way from slide 25 to 36. Goodbye.